When Emma slipped that desperate note across his table, millionaire Daniel thought he was just helping a stranger. He had no idea he was about to face the most dangerous game of his life. But no one imagined what would come next. Subscribe now, or the algorithm might separate us forever. Like, comment, and share to stay connected. Let's begin our story. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany tables of Le Bernardin as Daniel Winchester adjusted his platinum Rolex and stabbed at his truffle risotto with practiced indifference. At 34, he owned half of Manhattan's commercial real estate. Yet nothing could fill the emptiness that plagued him during these solitary lunches. More wine, sir? The sommelier hovered nearby with a bottle of Chateau Margaux that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Daniel waved him away without looking up from his phone, where stock prices flickered in endless green and red patterns. Winchester Enterprises had just closed another billion-dollar deal, but the victory felt hollow. Success had become as routine as breathing. A soft rustle made him glance up as the waitress approached his table. She moved with careful grace, her honey-blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that revealed elegant cheekbones. Her uniform was pressed and pristine, but something in her green eyes made Daniel pause mid-scroll. "Your appetizer, Mr. Winchester." Her voice carried a slight tremor as she placed the plate before him. "I didn't order an appetizer." Daniel's tone was sharp, businesslike. He prided himself on efficiency, and mistakes irritated him immensely. "It's compliments of the house." She lingered a moment too long, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the silverware. "Please enjoy." As she turned to leave, Daniel noticed a small piece of paper tucked beneath his water glass. Curious despite himself, he unfolded it discreetly. The message was written in elegant script that spoke of education despite her humble position. "Please pretend you know me. My life depends on it. I'll explain everything. Emma." Daniel's eyes snapped up to find the waitress, Emma, watching him from across the room. Her face was pale, and she kept glancing toward the restaurant's entrance with barely concealed fear. Two men in expensive suits had just walked in, their eyes systematically scanning every face in the dining room. Every instinct told Daniel to mind his own business. He hadn't built an empire by getting involved in other people's problems. But something about the quiet desperation in Emma's eyes triggered an unexpected protective urge. The men approached her with predatory smiles. "Emma Catherine Morrison," the taller one said quietly. "Time to come home." "I'm sorry, you must be mistaken." Emma's voice remained steady, but Daniel could see her knuckles white as she gripped her serving tray. "I don't know who you're looking for." "Don't make this difficult. Your father wants to see you." Daniel found himself standing before he'd consciously decided to move. "Emma, darling." His voice carried across the restaurant with commanding authority. "Is everything all right?" Every head turned toward him as he strode across the room with the confidence that came from owning buildings taller than cathedrals. The two men immediately stepped back, recognizing the kind of power that could make or break careers with a single phone call. "Daniel." Emma's relief was so genuine it almost fooled him. "I was just explaining to these gentlemen that I'm working." "Gentlemen?" Daniel's smile never reached his eyes as he extended his hand. "Daniel Winchester." "And you are?" The taller man hesitated, clearly weighing his options. "Marcus Fleming. We're old family friends of Emma's." "How lovely. I'm sure you understand that Emma and I have dinner plans this evening." Daniel's arm moved protectively around Emma's shoulders, and he felt her relax slightly against him. "Perhaps you could call her later to arrange a reunion." "Of course." Marcus's eyes hardened, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "Emma, we'll be in touch." As the men retreated, Daniel kept his arm around Emma until they disappeared through the entrance. Only then did he step back, his expression shifting to cool assessment. "My office, 20 minutes. He slipped her a business card. "We need to talk." Emma nodded, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and gratitude. "Thank you. I know this seems—" 20 minutes, Miss Morrison." Daniel was already walking away, his mind racing with questions and a strange sense that his perfectly ordered world was about to change forever. Back at his table, he left enough cash to cover a week's worth of meals and headed for the exit. As his driver held open the door of his black Bentley, Daniel caught Emma's reflection in the restaurant window. She was watching him leave with an expression he couldn't quite read, part gratitude, part something that looked almost like recognition. The drive to Winchester Tower took 12 minutes through Manhattan traffic that parted before his car like the Red Sea. Daniel used every second to run through possibilities. Corporate espionage was common in his world, but something about Emma's refined speech and the way she carried herself suggested this was personal, not professional. His assistant, Margaret, barely looked up as he strode through the marble lobby of his penthouse office. "Your 2:30 is waiting in conference room A and cancel everything for the next hour." Daniel loosened his tie as he entered his sanctuary of glass and steel. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Central Park, while Persian rugs and original Monets reminded visitors that power came with privileges. Exactly 20 minutes later, Margaret's voice crackled through the intercom. "A Miss Morrison to see you, sir." "Send her in." Emma entered tentatively, her server's uniform replaced by a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both modest and stunning. Without the stress of immediate danger, Daniel could see that she was genuinely beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with cosmetics or fashion. "Please, sit." He gestured to the leather chair across from his mahogany desk, noting how she perched on its edge as if ready to flee. "Now, Miss Morrison, perhaps you'd like to explain why I just became an accessory to whatever drama you're running from." Emma's hands twisted in her lap. "I'm sorry for involving you, Mr. Winchester. I was desperate and you seemed—" She trailed off, studying his face with unsettling intensity. "I seemed what exactly?" "Safe." The word came out barely above a whisper. "You seemed safe." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Those men knew your full name. They mentioned your father. This isn't some random harassment case, is it?" "No." Emma's voice grew stronger. "It's not. Are you in some kind of trouble with the law? Not the kind you're thinking of." She met his eyes directly for the first time. "Mr. Winchester, how much do you know about Morrison International?" The name hit Daniel like a physical blow. Morrison International had been one of the largest shipping conglomerates on the East Coast until it collapsed spectacularly 8 years ago amid accusations of embezzlement and fraud. The scandal had dominated financial news for months. Charles Morrison was arrested for fraud, Daniel said carefully. The company was liquidated. There were rumors about missing assets worth hundreds of millions. Charles Morrison was my father. Emma's chin lifted defiantly. And he was innocent. Daniel's expression didn't change, but Emma caught the slight tightening around his eyes. She'd expected skepticism. Everyone believed her father was guilty. The media had painted him as another greedy corporate executive who'd stolen from his own employees' pension funds. "Miss Morrison, Emma, I'm going to need significantly more context before I can help you." Daniel's voice remained professionally neutral. "Your father was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. My father was framed." Emma stood and began pacing his office, her controlled composure finally cracking. "Someone systematically destroyed our family, stole our company, and sent an innocent man to prison where he died 2 years later from a heart attack brought on by stress and shame. And you have proof of this?" Emma stopped pacing and turned to face him. "I've spent the last 8 years gathering evidence, working minimum wage jobs, living in tiny apartments, using different names to stay hidden while I pieced together the truth." "Hidden from whom?" "From the people who framed him, the same people who sent Marcus Fleming to drag me back today." Emma's voice grew bitter. "They thought they'd destroyed our family completely. But I survived and I know things that could send them to prison for the rest of their lives." Daniel studied her carefully. Her posture was straight-backed and dignified despite her circumstances, and when she spoke about her father, her educated accent became more pronounced. This wasn't some delusional waitress spinning fantasies. Emma Morrison was clearly intelligent and determined. "Why come forward now? Why not take your evidence to the FBI?" "Because I tried that. Twice." Emma's laugh held no humor. "The corruption goes deeper than I originally thought. People I trusted with information ended up dead in accidents or suddenly developed amnesia about our meetings. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. Emma pulled a small flash drive from her purse. Everything's on here. Bank records, emails, recordings of phone conversations. 8 years of my life condensed into 64 gigabytes of evidence. Daniel made no move to take the drive. And what exactly do you want from me, Miss Morrison? Protection while I find someone in law enforcement who can't be bought. Emma's eyes met his steadily. I need time to make copies, to verify which authorities are clean, and to prepare for the firestorm that's coming when this goes public. Why should I believe any of this? Because, Emma said quietly, you knew my father. The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Daniel's carefully controlled expression flickered for just a moment, long enough for Emma to know she'd hit her mark. I've never met Charles Morrison. No, but your father did, regularly. Emma's voice was gentle, but implacable. Morrison International and Winchester Development were partners on the Harbor Point project. My father spoke about Robert Winchester often, said he was one of the few honest men in real estate development. Daniel's jaw tightened. His father had died when Daniel was 26, just as he was taking control of Winchester Enterprises. My father worked with many companies. He also worked very late the night before my father was arrested. Emma pulled out her phone and showed him a photograph of 2 men in what appeared to be Daniel's father's office. This was taken by a security camera in your building 8 years ago. Recognize either of them? Daniel's breath caught. The photo clearly showed his father sitting across from Charles Morrison, both men looking exhausted and worried. Timestamps proved it was taken at 2:47 a.m. How did you get this? I told you. 8 years of investigation. Emma's voice softened. Your father was trying to help mine that night. They were going through financial records, trying to trace where the stolen money had actually gone. If that's true, why didn't my father come forward during the trial? Emma's expression grew pained. Because he died in a car accident the next morning. The office fell silent except for the distant hum of Manhattan traffic, 40 floors below. Daniel stared at the photograph, his mind racing through memories of his father's final weeks. Robert Winchester had been distracted, worried about something he'd refused to discuss. The accident had been ruled mechanical failure, a tragic loss that had devastated Daniel personally and professionally. You're suggesting my father was murdered. I'm suggesting your father discovered the same evidence that got mine framed. Emma's voice was barely audible. And I think whoever killed him has been watching the Winchester family ever since, making sure no one asks uncomfortable questions. Daniel set the phone down carefully, his hand steadier than he felt. Miss Morrison, do you realize what you're asking? You want me to believe that my father's death wasn't an accident, that there's been a conspiracy spanning 8 years, and that I should risk everything I've built to help you expose it? No. Emma moved closer to his desk, her green eyes blazing with conviction. I'm asking you to help me find the truth about both our fathers, and maybe save yourself in the process. Save myself from what? Think about it, Daniel. Emma's use of his first name sent an unexpected jolt through him. You're 34 years old, unmarried, no close friends, no serious romantic relationships. You work 18-hour days and eat lunch alone in restaurants that cost more than most people make in a month. When was the last time you actually enjoyed anything? My personal life is none of your concern. Isn't it? Emma's smile was sad but knowing. You saved me today because something inside you recognized a kindred spirit. We're both orphans, both fighting battles that have consumed our lives. The only difference is that I know what I'm fighting against. Daniel stood abruptly and walked to his window, staring out at the city he'd conquered but never truly possessed. Emma was right about his isolation, though he'd never admitted it even to himself. Success had cost him every meaningful relationship he'd ever had. Let's say I believe you, he said without turning around. What makes you think we can succeed where you failed for 8 years? Because now I'm not alone. Emma's reflection appeared beside his in the window. And because you have resources I could never access. Money, connections, private security, legal teams that can't be intimidated or bought. And what do you bring to this partnership besides danger and conspiracy theories? Emma was quiet for so long that Daniel finally turned to look at her. She was studying his face with that intense focus again, as if memorizing every detail. "I bring the truth," she said finally. "And something else you've been missing for a very long time. Which is? A reason to care about something more than profit margins." Emma moved closer, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "When was the last time you felt truly alive, Daniel Winchester?" Before he could answer, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Winchester, there are two gentlemen here who say they need to speak with you urgently about Miss Morrison." Daniel and Emma locked eyes. Marcus Fleming had found them faster than either had expected. "Send them up," Daniel said quietly, never breaking eye contact with Emma. "Miss Morrison and I have quite a lot to discuss." Marcus Fleming entered Daniel's office with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. His companion, a shorter man with cold eyes and expensive suit, remained by the door like a guard. Daniel stayed seated behind his desk, projecting the kind of casual authority that came from controlling billion-dollar deals. "Mr. Winchester, thank you for seeing us." Marcus's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "I believe you've met Emma. Miss Morrison and I were just discussing her employment opportunities." Daniel's voice was perfectly level. "She's quite impressive." Emma stood beside Daniel's chair, her hand resting lightly on the back, a subtle show of solidarity that wasn't lost on either visitor. She'd changed during the few minutes since Margaret's warning, her posture more confident, her expression calm. Daniel found himself admiring her composure under pressure. "I'm sure she is." Marcus's eyes never left Emma's face. "However, Miss Morrison has family obligations that require her immediate attention." "I'm 25 years old, Mr. Fleming." Emma's voice carried just the right note of confused innocence. "I don't have any family. Your grandfather is quite anxious to see you, Emma. He's been worried sick since you disappeared." Daniel watched Emma's face carefully and caught the flash of genuine surprise before she masked it. Whatever game Fleming was playing, this grandfather angle was news to her. "My grandfather died when I was 12, Emma said flatly. "Your maternal grandfather, Emanuel Rostov, is very much alive and very eager to reunite with his only remaining family." Marcus reached into his jacket and produced a leather portfolio. "He's prepared to offer you a rather substantial inheritance in exchange for your return to the family fold." Emanuel Rostov. Daniel recognized the name immediately. Russian shipping magnate, rumors of organized crime connections, currently worth somewhere north of $2 billion. If Emma was Rostov's granddaughter, the Morrison International scandal suddenly made much more sense, and much more dangerous. "I've never heard of Emanuel Rostov," Emma said, but Daniel caught the slight tremor in her voice. "Your mother was Elena Rostov before she married Charles Morrison." Marcus's smile widened. "Perhaps she never mentioned her family's business interests." Emma's hand tightened on Daniel's chair. "My mother died when I was 16. She never spoke about any relatives." "Understandable. The Rostov family had a falling out with Elena when she married your father. But time heals all wounds, and your grandfather is prepared to forgive past disagreements." Marcus placed several photographs on Daniel's desk. "These were taken at your parents' wedding. Elena looks very much like you, don't you think?" Daniel glanced at the photos and felt his stomach drop. The resemblance between Emma and the young woman in the wedding dress was unmistakable. More unsettling were the other faces in the crowd, men he recognized from FBI most wanted lists and international watch reports. "Your grandfather controls shipping routes throughout Eastern Europe and South America," Marcus continued. "He's prepared to make you a partner in those operations, with full access to the family fortune. All he asks in return is your loyalty and discretion regarding past misunderstandings." "What kind of misunderstandings?" Daniel interjected. Marcus's attention shifted to him with laser focus. "Mr. Winchester, with all due respect, this is a family matter. Miss Morrison is considering a position with my company. I have a vested interest in ensuring my potential employees aren't involved in anything that might create legal complications. I can assure you that working with the Rostov family would be far more lucrative than any position Winchester Enterprises could offer." Marcus's tone carried a subtle threat. Your father understood the benefits of cooperation with the right people. The words hit Daniel like a slap. What did you just say? Your father was a pragmatic man, Mr. Winchester. He knew when to mind his own business and when to be helpful. Marcus's smile turned predatory. Unfortunately, Charles Morrison never learned that lesson. Emma stepped forward, her fear finally showing. Are you threatening us? I'm offering you opportunities. Marcus collected the photographs from Daniel's desk. Emma, your grandfather expects you for dinner tomorrow evening. The address is in this envelope, along with documentation proving your heritage and inheritance rights. He placed a thick manila envelope next to Daniel's computer. Mr. Winchester, I trust you'll encourage Miss Morrison to make the right choice. Your father would have wanted you to stay out of matters that don't concern you. As quickly as they'd arrived, Marcus and his companion were gone, leaving Daniel and Emma alone with the suffocating weight of implications and threats. Emma sank into the chair across from Daniel's desk, her composure finally cracking. I swear to you I had no idea about any grandfather or Russian connections. But you recognize the possibility. Daniel's voice was sharp. Something about this makes sense to you. My mother. Emma pressed her hands to her temples. She spoke Russian sometimes when she was upset. And she was terrified of certain news stories, anything about organized crime or shipping industry investigations. I always thought it was just because of my father's business troubles. Daniel opened the envelope Marcus had left behind. Inside were birth certificates, immigration records, and DNA test results that appeared to confirm Emma's relationship to Emmanuel Rostov. There were also financial documents showing accounts with her name holding millions of dollars. This is why those men found you today, Daniel said grimly. Your grandfather didn't just discover your existence. He's been watching you for years, waiting for the right moment to make contact. But why now? Why after all this time? Daniel continued reading through the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. Because Emmanuel Rostov is dying. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months to live according to these medical reports. He needs an heir to inherit his empire, and you're the only family he has left. Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. And if I refuse? Based on Marcus Fleming's demeanor, I don't think refusal is an option they're prepared to accept. Daniel looked up from the papers. Emma, do you understand what you've stumbled into? This isn't just about clearing your father's name anymore. You're the potential heir to a criminal empire worth billions of dollars. I don't want their money. Emma's voice was fierce. I want justice for my father. Those might be mutually exclusive goals. Daniel stood and walked to his window again, his mind racing through possibilities and consequences. If Rostov was involved in framing your father, confronting him could get us both killed. Us? Emma looked up at him with surprise. Daniel, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He turned back to face her, and Emma was startled by the intensity in his dark eyes. Marcus Fleming made this personal when he threatened me with my father's example. I want to know exactly what happened to Robert Winchester, and I want to know why these people think they can manipulate my decisions. Emma stood slowly, hope and fear warring in her expression. Are you sure? This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment you asked for my help. Daniel moved closer to her, close enough to see the gold flecks in her green eyes. Besides, you were right about something. I have been missing a reason to care about more than profit margins. Daniel. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. We're going to need somewhere safe to plan our next move. Somewhere your grandfather's people can't reach us. Daniel's hand moved to touch her cheek, a gesture that surprised them both. Do you trust me? I don't have much choice. Emma's smile was tremulous but genuine. But yes, I trust you. Good, because we're about to declare war on one of the most dangerous men in the world. Daniel's thumb traced across her cheekbone. And I have a feeling our lives are never going to be the same. As Emma leaned into his touch, neither of them noticed the small surveillance device that Marcus Fleming had planted behind Daniel's bookshelf, or the fact that their entire conversation had been transmitted directly to Emmanuel Rostov's compound in Brooklyn, where the dying patriarch was already making plans for his granddaughter's inevitable homecoming. The safe house was a penthouse Daniel owned under a shell corporation, overlooking the Hudson River from the Upper West Side. As Emma stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows watching the city lights shimmer on the water, Daniel worked furiously at his laptop, using encrypted connections to dig deeper into the Rostov family's operations. "We have a problem," he announced after 2 hours of research. "A big one." Emma turned from the window, noting the tension in his shoulders. "What did you find?" "Your grandfather doesn't just want you back for sentimental reasons. Emmanuel Rostov is facing federal indictments on 17 counts of money laundering, human trafficking, and racketeering. The government has been building a case against him for 3 years. And if he dies before trial, his entire empire gets seized by the federal government under RICO statutes. But if he has a legitimate heir with no criminal background..." Daniel's expression was grim. "Someone like you could inherit everything legally, then choose to cooperate with law enforcement in exchange for immunity." Emma sank onto the leather sofa, the implications hitting her like physical blows. "He wants to use me as a shield. Worse than that, I found records of shell companies' offshore accounts, real estate holdings worth over $4 billion. If you're declared his heir, you become responsible for cleaning up his criminal enterprises. You'd be trapped, cooperate with his operation, or face prosecution yourself. There has to be a way out. What if I refuse the inheritance?" Daniel's laugh was bitter. "Emma, these people killed your father and mine to protect their secrets. Do you really think they'll just let you walk away now that you know the truth?" The weight of their situation settled over them like a suffocating blanket. Emma pulled her knees to her chest, looking younger and more vulnerable than her 25 years. Daniel fought the urge to comfort her physically. They were in enough danger without adding romantic complications. "There's something else," Daniel said quietly. "I found communications between Rostov's organization and Winchester Enterprises. Financial transactions dating back 12 years. Emma's head snapped up. "What kind of transactions?" "Money laundering through real estate purchases. My father's company was used to clean Rostov's drug money without my father's knowledge." Daniel's voice was tight with controlled rage. "When Charles Morrison started investigating irregularities in the shipping routes, he discovered the connection. That's why both our fathers had to die. Who else knows about this? That's what terrifies me. These financial records should have been discovered years ago during federal investigations. The fact that they're still buried means Rostov has people inside law enforcement, maybe even the FBI." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of their predicament. "So we can't trust anyone in authority. We can't run because they'll find us, and we can't fight because they have unlimited resources and government connections. There might be one option." Daniel closed his laptop and moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "It's dangerous, probably suicidal, but it's the only play I can see. Tell me. We give Rostov exactly what he wants. You agree to meet with him, accept your position as his heir, and get close enough to gather evidence that even corrupt federal agents can't ignore." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to walk into the lion's den voluntarily?" "I want us to walk in together." Daniel's hand covered hers. "As your business partner and romantic interest. Rostov expects you to eventually take control of legitimate business operations. That's how money laundering works. You need someone with my background to help transition the criminal enterprises into legal investments. Daniel, if they discover what we're really doing, they'll kill us both, I know." His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that was becoming dangerously familiar. "But Emma, we're dead anyway if we don't try. And this way, we might actually save other people from becoming their victims." Emma studied his face, seeing determination mixed with something deeper in his dark eyes. "Why are you willing to risk everything for me? We barely know each other." Daniel was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because for the first time in 8 years, I feel like I'm fighting for something that matters. My father built Winchester Enterprises to help people, to create homes and communities. I turned it into a machine for generating profit. Maybe this is my chance to honor his memory properly. And if we don't survive, then at least we'll die fighting for justice instead of hiding in fear." Daniel's hand moved to cup her cheek. Emma, I know this is insane, but I think I'm falling. His phone buzzed with an urgent message. Daniel's expression hardened as he read it. What is it? Marcus Fleming. He knows we're here. Daniel showed her the text. Mr. Winchester, Mr. Rostov requests your presence at dinner tomorrow evening along with his granddaughter. The car will arrive at 7 p.m. I trust you'll both be ready. Emma felt ice forming in her stomach. How did they find us so quickly? Daniel was already moving toward his wall safe, pulling out documents and cash. Professional surveillance teams, probably government-grade equipment. We need to leave. Now. Where can we go that they won't find us? Nowhere. Daniel's voice was flat with resignation. Emma, I think it's time to accept that we're out of options. Tomorrow night, we're going to meet your grandfather. As they gathered their belongings, neither Daniel nor Emma noticed the small drone hovering outside their window, its cameras recording every word of their conversation. In a warehouse across the river, Marcus Fleming smiled as he watched their desperate planning unfold on multiple screens. Emmanuel Rostov might be dying, but his reach was still long enough to control every move his granddaughter made. Tomorrow's dinner would be more than a family reunion. It would be the moment Emma Morrison learned that some prisons were built from family obligations and escape was never really an option. The game was already over. They just didn't know it yet. The Rostov compound in Brighton Beach looked like a fortress disguised as a mansion. 20-foot walls topped with razor wire surrounded a Georgian-style estate that screamed new money and old-world paranoia. As their black sedan approached the iron gates, Emma gripped Daniel's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Remember, Daniel murmured, we're here because we want to be. You're curious about your heritage. I'm interested in legitimate business opportunities, nothing more. And if he suspects what we're really doing, then we improvise and hope we're faster than his security team. The gates opened silently, revealing a circular driveway lined with armed guards who didn't bother to hide their weapons. Marcus Fleming waited at the front entrance, his predatory smile wider than ever. Welcome home, Emma. His tone was mockingly warm. Your grandfather has been counting the minutes. Inside, the mansion was a testament to excessive wealth and questionable taste. Gold-leafed everything, priceless art hung next to gaudy family portraits, and crystal chandeliers that belonged in Versailles. Emma felt nauseated by the ostentatious display, knowing it was all built on suffering and crime. Emmanuel Rostov received them in a library that could have housed a small university. At 78, he was still an imposing figure despite the cancer ravaging his body. His pale blue eyes, so similar to Emma's mother's, studied his granddaughter with undisguised hunger. Ekaterina. His voice carried a heavy Russian accent and decades of command. You look exactly like your mother at your age. My name is Emma. Her voice was steady despite her fear. Emma is the name of a servant girl hiding from her destiny. You are Ekaterina Rostova, heir to an empire your mother was too weak to claim. Emmanuel gestured for them to sit in chairs clearly positioned to make them feel small and vulnerable. Mr. Winchester, I trust you understand the magnitude of what you've become involved in. I understand you're offering Emma opportunities to legitimize family business interests. Daniel's tone was carefully neutral. That's exactly the kind of diversification Winchester Enterprises specializes in. Emmanuel's laugh was a harsh bark. Diversification, yes, I suppose that's one word for it. His attention shifted back to Emma. Tell me, child, what do you know about your mother's life before she betrayed our family? I know she was happy with my father. That's all that matters. Elena was promised in marriage to Dmitry Volkov when she was 16. The union would have connected our shipping empire with his distribution networks throughout Eastern Europe. Instead, she ran away with a weak American businessman who understood nothing about power or loyalty. Emma's jaw tightened. My father was a good man. Your father was a fool who got in the way of business. Emmanuel's voice turned arctic. Just as you are getting in the way now. Daniel felt Emma tense beside him. Mr. Rostov, perhaps we should discuss the specific opportunities you mentioned. Emma and I are both interested in building something legitimate. Are you? Emmanuel's pale eyes fixed on Daniel with laser intensity. Tell me, Mr. Winchester, what did your father say about our business relationship before his unfortunate accident? The question was a trap, and Daniel knew it. My father kept his business dealings confidential. I learned about your connection through my own research. Your own research. Emmanuel nodded slowly. And what did this research reveal? That Rostov Shipping moved substantial cargo through ports where Winchester Development built warehouses and distribution centers. That money from those relationships helped fund some of our largest projects. Daniel met the old man's stare steadily. I also discovered that my father was investigating discrepancies in shipping manifests shortly before his death. The library fell silent except for the ticking of an ornate grandfather clock. Emmanuel's expression didn't change, but Marcus Fleming shifted position slightly, his hand moving closer to his concealed weapon. Your father was an idealist, Mr. Winchester. He believed in concepts like justice and moral responsibility. Such beliefs can be limiting in international business. They can also be profitable in the long term. Legitimate businesses don't face federal investigations or asset seizures. True. Emmanuel smiled, but it never reached his eyes. Which is why I need Ekaterina to help transition our operations into something more sustainable. Emma found her voice. And if I refuse? You won't refuse. Emmanuel's confidence was absolute. Because you're intelligent enough to understand your situation. Marcus, show them the surveillance footage. Fleming activated a large screen that descended from the ceiling. Video feeds showed Daniel's safe house, his office building, Emma's former apartment, even the restaurant where they'd first met. The message was clear. They'd been watched from the very beginning. We've been monitoring your investigation for months, Emmanuel continued. Every document you've collected, every conversation you've had, every plan you've made. Did you really think you could outsmart an organization that has survived decades of federal scrutiny? Emma's voice was barely audible. You knew. From the beginning, you knew what I was doing. Of course. Marcus has been feeding you information, guiding your research toward discoveries we wanted you to make. Your father's innocence, the connection to Winchester Enterprises, even the evidence of our money laundering operations, all carefully orchestrated to bring you here tonight. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. The flash drive Emma showed me contains exactly what we wanted you to see. Nothing more, nothing less. Emmanuel's smile widened. You see, Mr. Winchester, legitimate businessmen like your father always make the same mistake. They believe that truth and justice will eventually prevail. But sometimes the truth is what powerful people decide it should be. Emma stood abruptly, her face flushed with rage and betrayal. You bastard, you let me think I was fighting for my father's honor when you're the one who destroyed him. I am the one who elevated him. Charles Morrison was nobody until he married into our family. His shipping business thrived because of our protection and connections, when he chose to bite the hand that fed him. You had him murdered. I had him neutralized. Emmanuel's voice held no remorse. Just as I had Robert Winchester neutralized when he became inconvenient. Just as I can have anyone neutralized who threatens our family's interests. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Daniel moved protectively closer to Emma, his mind racing through escape scenarios and finding none that didn't end in immediate death. However, Emmanuel continued, I prefer cooperation to elimination. Ekaterina, you will accept your position as my heir. You will use Mr. Winchester's expertise to legitimize our operations. And you will do this willingly, because the alternative is watching everyone you care about die slowly and painfully. Emma's hands shook with fury. I'll never help you. Yes, you will. Because if you don't, I'll ensure that every employee of Winchester Enterprises, all 4,000 of them, loses their jobs, their homes, and their family's security. I'll destroy their lives one by one until you agree to cooperate. Daniel felt something snap inside him. You're insane if you think we'll help you hurt innocent people. Then you're both more naive than I thought. Emmanuel pressed a button on his chair and 6 armed guards entered the library. Marcus, escort our guests to the East Wing. They'll need time to consider their options before dinner. As they were led away at gunpoint, Emma caught Daniel's eye. She saw determination there instead of defeat, and something else. a plan forming behind his dark gaze. Emmanuel Rostov had made two critical mistakes. He'd assumed that Daniel's morality would paralyze him with indecision, and he'd underestimated the lengths that two people would go to protect each other. Those mistakes were about to cost him everything. The East Wing turned out to be a luxurious prison, beautiful rooms with locked doors and barred windows overlooking the compound's private beach. As guards patrolled outside their adjacent suites, Daniel and Emma discovered they could communicate through a shared balcony that surveillance cameras couldn't monitor. "Tell me you have a plan," Emma whispered as they huddled in the shadows between their rooms. "I have a plan. You're not going to like it." Daniel's voice was grim. "How good are you at playing the role of a grateful granddaughter?" "Daniel, whatever you're thinking, Emma, listen to me. Rostov made a critical error tonight. He showed us his entire surveillance network, his security protocols, and most importantly, his weakness." "What weakness? The man controls a criminal empire worth billions." "He's dying. And he's desperate." Daniel pulled out his phone, showing her a message he'd typed but not sent. "He needs you to voluntarily accept your inheritance for legal reasons. If you're coerced or forced, federal courts can invalidate the transfer even after his death." Emma studied the message, a detailed explanation of their situation sent to someone named Senator Catherine Walsh, Judiciary Committee. "You're going to expose everything?" "We're going to expose everything. But first you have to convince him that you've accepted your fate. Make him believe he's won, that you're ready to take your place in the family business. And then we destroy him from the inside." Daniel's smile was predatory. "Rostov thinks he's been manipulating us, but he made one crucial mistake. He brought us here together, gave us access to his home base, and surrounded us with evidence of his crimes." Emma felt a spark of hope. "What do you need me to do?" "Be the granddaughter he wants. Ask about family history. Express interest in learning the business. Make him believe you're finally ready to embrace your heritage. Can you do that?" "I can do that." Emma's voice grew stronger. "But Daniel, if this goes wrong—" "It won't go wrong." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite their desperate circumstances. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you before we walk back into that room." "What?" "I love you." The words came out rushed, as if he'd been holding them back for days. "I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other for 48 hours, but I love you. And I need you to know that whatever happens tonight, fighting beside you has been the most meaningful thing I've ever done." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know." He kissed her forehead softly. "Ready to save the world?" "Ready." 20 minutes later, they were escorted back to Emmanuel's dining room, where a feast had been laid out on a table that could seat 20. The old man sat at the head, flanked by Marcus Fleming and two other men Emma didn't recognize. "I trust you've had time to consider your situation," Emmanuel said, as they took their assigned seats. Emma straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly. "I have, and I want to know about my mother's life before she left. I want to understand what I'm inheriting." Emmanuel's expression brightened with genuine pleasure. "Now you sound like a Rostova." Elena was the most beautiful woman in Brighton Beach, intelligent and fierce. She could have ruled beside Dmitry Volkov, controlled shipping routes from Vladivostok to New York. Why did she leave? She was young and romantic. She believed love was more important than power. Emmanuel's voice held old pain. Charles Morrison convinced her that she could be happy in poverty, as long as they were together. Foolish sentiment. Emma forced herself to nod sympathetically. But she was wrong. Of course she was wrong. Love fades, Ekaterina. Power endures. Emmanuel gestured to the opulent room around them. This is your birthright. Shipping companies, real estate empires, political connections that reach the highest levels of government. And the illegal activities? Temporary necessities. With your legitimacy and Mr. Winchester's expertise, we can transition everything into clean investments within 5 years. You'll inherit a legal empire worth more than most countries' GDP. Daniel leaned forward with what appeared to be genuine interest. What's the timeline for this transition? We begin immediately. Tomorrow? Ekaterina signs documents accepting her position as my heir. By the end of the week, you'll both be integrated into our operations. Emmanuel raised his wine glass. To family reunions and profitable partnerships. As they clinked glasses, Emma felt her phone vibrate with an incoming message. Under the table, she saw Daniel's text. Now. Emma stood gracefully, moving to embrace her grandfather. Thank you for giving me the chance to understand my heritage. As Emmanuel awkwardly returned the hug, Emma pressed a small device against his jacket, a listening device Daniel had hidden in his phone case. Across the room, Daniel excused himself to use the restroom, planting similar devices throughout the mansion. For the next 2 hours, they played their roles perfectly. Emma asked questions about family history while Daniel discussed laundering techniques with Marcus Fleming. All the while, their devices recorded conversations, financial details, and criminal confessions that would bring down the entire organization. At midnight, Emmanuel finally retired, exhausted from the evening's excitement. Tomorrow begins your new life, Ekaterina. Sleep well. As guards escorted them back to their rooms, Emma and Daniel exchanged glances full of love and determination. They'd gathered enough evidence to destroy Rostov's empire, but their most dangerous work still lay ahead. In the pre-dawn darkness, Daniel activated the transmitter he'd hidden in Emmanuel's study. Every recording, every document, every piece of evidence they'd gathered uploaded instantly to Senator Walsh's secure servers, along with detailed instructions for coordinating federal raids. By sunrise, FBI agents surrounded the compound. By noon, Emmanuel Rostov and Marcus Fleming were in federal custody, facing life sentences for crimes spanning 3 decades. 6 months later, Daniel and Emma stood on the deck of his private yacht, watching the sunset paint the Atlantic Ocean in shades of gold and crimson. The legal battles were finally over. Rostov's empire had been dismantled, his assets seized, and justice served for both their fathers. Any regrets? Daniel asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Only one. Emma leaned back against his chest. I wish our fathers could have seen this moment. I think they can. Daniel's voice was soft with emotion. And I think they'd be proud of what we built together. Emma turned in his arms, studying the face she'd grown to love more than life itself. Mr. Winchester, are you ready for our next adventure? That depends. What did you have in mind, Mrs. Winchester? Emma's engagement ring caught the dying sunlight as she reached up to kiss her husband. How about we try building something purely legitimate for a change? Maybe start with a family of our own. Daniel's laughter was rich with joy and possibility. I can't think of anything I'd rather build with you. As their yacht sailed toward the horizon, neither Emma nor Daniel looked back toward the shore. They'd fought for justice, found true love, and created a future worth believing in. The past was finally at peace, and their new life together stretched ahead like an endless promise of happiness. In the end, love hadn't just conquered all. It had redeemed everything they'd lost and given them something even more precious, a chance to start over, together, with hearts full of hope and hands ready to build dreams that would last forever.